when it comes to developing strong partnerships, this has always been the case for me. It is a relationship. Like you have to form a friendship and a relationship first to have like the most effective partnership.
Hello and welcome to Love as a Business Strategy, a podcast that brings humanity to the workplace. We're here to talk about business, but we want to tackle topics that most business leaders shy away from. We believe that humanity and love should be at the center of every successful business. As always, I'm your host, Jeff Ma, but I have a special co-host. Followers of the show will recognize, of course, but not as often as I'd like nowadays, but I'm joined by Chris Petrie. Hey, Chris, how's it going?
Thanks, Jeff. I always need a special invitation. I can't just show up. So people don't see me because you don't invite me.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
Well,
kidding, listeners.
Well, whether Chris is here or not, we are always here to have those conversations and hear stories and anecdotes from real people in the real world, talking about the realities, right, of business and life. So my guest today is Anthony Marinos. And since 2017, Anthony has led business development and creator relationships at Charity Water. He's been crafting and executing various partnerships and fundraising campaigns to help bring clean water to more people in need. He spent the earlier years of his career in marketing and sales roles at different startups, most notably Zipcar, before realizing that his talents would be better utilized at an organization dedicated to actually changing the world. Widely known by those close to him, which we'll test later, for his unshakable optimism and endless energy, Anthony is excited to see the day when every person on this planet has access to clean water once and for all. Welcome to the show, Anthony. How are you?
Thank you so much, Jeff. Yeah, it's great to be on the show today with you and my old friend Chris. Here we are. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And what a bio. It's like I wrote it for myself or something.
Oh man, it's almost. Let's see if you catch the minor tweaks that I made. But anyways, let's get this out of the way. So, Chris, usually when I invite you onto the show, it's for good reason. So, why are you here today, Chris?
Yeah. Well, so sort of plot twist, you guys. Anthony and I went to college together.
Surprise!
Close friends in college. But more importantly, we had this shared experience where we were both on the freshman orientation program at our alma mater, the George Washington University. And that's how we got connected and that's how we got close. It was about 30 of us who sort of were representatives of the university to incoming freshmen. And it was the most I think critical summers of our college careers, but it just taught us so much just about leadership as foundation. But I will just say personally, I also got to meet the parents of Anthony Marinos, who are just as awesome, if not a little bit more awesome than he is. And the funny story there, which is a little bit embarrassing on my part. So when we were actually roommates that summer, and Anthony had this family photo of him, his sister, and his parents up, and his dad had this like really intense mustache, and his mom had that sort of 90s hairstyle. And I just started calling them Stavros and Helena because they were like, this quintessential Greek sort of statuesque family. And I was just around the room, I would call them Stavros and Helena. And he was like, I just hung out with my mom. I was like, oh, tell Helena I said hi. I was joking. I didn't think that he would actually go back and tell them that I made up nicknames for them. He did. And so they came to visit us and they introduced themselves as Stavros and Helena to me. And I was so embarrassed. So sorry. But they have stuck with that. They insist that I call them that. So now I refer to them as Stavros and Helena.
They
even
loved
though their
it.
names their names are Paul and Lynn. So hi, Paul and Lynn, if you're watching.
Yeah, they loved it. I know they loved it. And also that photo you're talking about is my favorite family photo. It's such a funny photo.
So that's a little backstory about Anthony and I. But yeah, we were on this freshman orientation team, which, to be honest, solid team. Probably not the best from a leadership experience, but it was a great team.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that, Anthony, about that experience?
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be really relevant to our conversation today, I think, but it was one of those things where the team bonded so well together. And I think we really understood what it meant to create the right types of relationships, really leading with love, but even with friendship before anything else. I think that's pretty common amongst students. Like, obviously, when you're thrown into a group of people that are like-minded and your same age, that's going to naturally happen that way. But yeah, exactly like Chris was alluding to, there was not the same type of sentiment from the leadership that, the faculty leaders and even our student leaders at that time. It was like pretty odd power dynamic, and probably would have benefited from this type of podcast or the lessons in the book, So yeah.
No, we had some early learnings about, how to handle, forgiveness, but also when people make a mistake, what do you do? How do you not sort of treat them like they are, second
Yeah.
class citizens, and sort of create
Yeah.
environments where they're ridiculed and humiliated every chance that you get, right? Like that was our environment, but we still sort of banded together, and some might call it trauma bonding, but I thought it was still effective bonding. But we just became a really tight knit crew, so much so that we are still in contact with each other today. We're a part of each other's lives. I was just telling Anthony, I spent some time earlier this week with one of our other peers who was a part of it. He just had some twins, so I mean, it created lifelong bonds, but it was unfortunately under the guise of not the greatest leadership, or the great behaviors that leaders didn't model. But yeah.
But how many monument tours have you done, Chris? That's a callback. That's a good example of, like, we would get publicly. I think it's a great example of, like, how not to treat team members when maybe they haven't met your expectations. Is like they were publicly shaming us for not taking groups of students and their families on tours of the monuments. So they
At
would
midnight.
at midnight. So that was a joke amongst us but how many monument tours have you done? It was like we were
Yes.
getting very, very much like a "what have you done for me lately" attitude, in kind of a shameful way, which was
Yep.
is odd. Yeah.
We each had to stand up individually and answer the question. It wasn't just it wasn't just a broad question. Like, we literally each had to stand up and answer how many tours had we done the previous orientation. And of course, the people who are early to bed, like me, like absolutely zero. Like, that was always optional. Like, we were never required. It was never
No.
something I agreed to do. It was an optional, like, nice to do thing. But it was one of those environments where it was just like, wait, what? And so
Yeah.
it became this like laughing joke among us that, like, whenever we saw each other, even after the orientation, like, how many midnight monument tours did you do? How many? Have you done any? Did you do any?
It's kind of a good mantra that you can have
Yes.
with friends. Yeah.
Well,
But
go ahead,
Joe.
Chris. Go ahead, Chris.
I was just gonna ask. I'm really curious. Like, after we graduated, so Anthony, went into marketing. And by the way, Anthony was always the life of the party, no matter where he was, no matter what room he was in. So that optimism and energy has followed him ever since I've known him. And so I'm curious to know, like, when you got into the working world and having that taste at GW, just in terms of that orientation program, what else, or what did you see in terms of the behaviors and now leading partnerships? Like, what has helped you, or what have you sort of avoided learning or repeating, in your early career?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it was almost immediate too that I witnessed stuff at Zipcar, which was my first real job out of college, where I was working there as a street team marketer, part-time when we were seniors, and then I moved right into a full-time marketing coordinator role. And our boss, our GM for the DC area at the time, was really an amazing leader. Like, he led with compassion and love, and we had such strong personal relationships amongst our small team in the DC area. But he was also really irreverent, and that wound up getting him in a bit of trouble, and ultimately him and Zipcar parting ways even early, like very early in my career. And I remember thinking, like, man, I can't believe that this happens so often. That like it's my first job out of school, and I'm already witnessing someone who had such respect and loyalty from his team get removed because he wasn't like playing by the rules or like was trying to push back on leadership. And it was something that has stuck with me ever since. I feel like I have that in my own family values also about opening, not staying quiet, always trying to point out when things can be better or change, and defending those that you are responsible for. And I felt like he had done such a good job of that and was punished for it. But ultimately, in the end, my time there, like almost right away, the new person that joined, she became a really close friend and an incredible leader as well. So I felt very lucky that we replaced one good leader with another, and it wasn't like we just got some cookie cutter, GM who was going to abide by all the rules. She arguably is maybe more irreverent than the first boss. So I took a lot of lessons from them right away as a new college grad, and I feel like it's continued to carry with me through everything I've done.
Yeah,
for
awesome.
sure.
And I know one of the things that I've always admired about you is that you have the right amount of levity that you bring into very awkward situations that make them less awkward. And I know for me, personally, like that has always been my inspiration when I'm in those awkward situations, especially with clients. I try to think like, what would Anthony do in this moment? And what would he say? And I try and sort of like, embody Anthony inside of those meetings and conversations. But it's just something that I've noticed and have always admired, knowing you, is that you have that perfect sort of just tip towards, levity, and it brings everyone back to a place of common, good, but also the ability to empathize with one another, or just take a break and sort of step back and rethink what we were trying to achieve.
I would bet that some of the senior leaders at the places I've worked would tell you that sometimes it's too much levity. But I think the best, it's very nice of you to say, Chris. I really appreciate it. I mean, I've always felt that you should be yourself in everything that you do. And I never understood the idea of a work self versus a personal at-home version of you. That never computed for me. It's always been the case. I've been wearing high top sneakers to meetings with presidents of companies before it was cool. So, I've never understood the dress code thing down to like your personality changing. It's like you are who you are, and that's what you should be in every situation. I think the area that it's most visible in for me still to this day are my out of offices. I'll have to forward you some of my out of office messages.
Please do. Please do.
Where it's like, it's personal, like they're personal. I actually tell you where I am, what I'm doing, why I'm there. And the responses that I get from people are always like, wow, this was like amazing. This made me realize I need to go on vacation, like stuff like that. So
I actually had no idea that you did that, because there was a period, this was before Softway, where I would put creative out of office messages. I would do a rundown of what happened on the Real Housewives that week, so that in case you missed it, like what happened. I've written lyrics and poems. I've done so much. And it was more there was a customer that I worked with in London, and I would do it specifically for them because they would always reach out and stay in touch with me, hoping to get an out of office message.
That's so
That's actually incredible. So I was in the US, it was like the only way to stay connected, because I couldn't visit them every single week.
Yeah.
And then they would forward my out of offices to their teams across the company that they worked at. So it was the way that I built a rapport, even though I wasn't on the ground.
I love that.
That's amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And then my CEO at the time told me to stop, so I had to stop. So that ended that. I was like, oh.
Anthony, because I don't know you as well, I'm feeling jealous right now, a little bit of FOMO. But can you just, I'm always curious. I always want to know, where your passion is today. Like, what are you passionate about in life?
Yeah. Well, I always like thinking about when my dad, he still kind of asked me this, but not as much anymore. But I remember when he asked me in college, like what my 5-year plan was. And I said to have fun. And I feel like he was just like, I'm so tired of this. Like, it's like, and I was like, what other answer? But I was like, what other answer is there? So when I think about what I'm passionate about, or where I get my passion from, honestly, when I look at my current role at Charity Water, which I've been at Charity Water now since 2017, overseeing business development on the partnership side of things. So working with brands of all different shapes and sizes to create partnerships that generate revenue and awareness for what we do. And I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here when I say my team would tell you the same thing, that I'm just so incredibly passionate about the org. It's one of our values, actually. And it's one that I think is the most important, because if you don't have passion for what you do, who you're with, even the food that you're eating, it's hard to like pretend that you're enjoying it or being genuine in it. It's why I've appreciated that it's happened a lot more in these last few years, where people are becoming or getting more comfortable with being honest when maybe they don't like the newest show that's out, or they don't have to pretend like, I'm sorry, like I don't like that album. It's like being able to admit what you are and aren't passionate about, I think is a huge benefit to the way the direction that we've been moving in. But I would say like Charity Water is something I'm hugely passionate about. Like being able to solve the water crisis in our lifetime is something I care so deeply about. I still am very passionate about having fun in everything that I do. I'm so passionate about life. Like, I think that life is amazing, that most things are amazing if you have the right perspective. And it's easy for me to become excited about something and stay excited about it because of that.
Nice. Shout out to life.
Yeah. Passionate about life, baby. That's it. Yeah.
Great answer.
He's so passionate about life that I know that sometimes it might create what some might call procrastination. Do you want to talk about your wedding invitation story?
Yes, that we just, maybe I'm having too much fun. That I know that operational excellence is important. It is not my strong suit on that side of things, but yeah, my wife and I both suffer from this a bit, where like it was hard for us to rally around all the logistics of the wedding planning, to the point that our guests were becoming disgruntled and wanting to know like, what is happening? Like, where are we staying? We're like, guys, trust us. And so we wound up making our wedding URL weareprocrastinators.com. And people didn't think it was real. And then they went to it and they were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you bought this. And they asked us, how is it still available? And we were like, well, I guess they never got around to buying it. So now we own weareprocrastinators.com, and we feel like we're going to use it for the rest of our lives to like
one day
like highlight, but like we can highlight like a baby announcement that's a year late or something, like being like, hey, we realized we didn't tell you that we had a child. Like, here they are at one.
Wouldn't it be more fitting if you never do anything with it?
Yeah. Actually, you're right. We should make a really good graphic that says like coming soon, like give us a moment. We're still working on it. Yeah. Yeah. I like that, Jeff. That's good.
You're welcome. So let's talk about partnerships in particular, because I think I mean there's a lot to it that people may not even understand. Like, can you or maybe even Chris, you can lead us off in like this topic in general.
I mean, I'm interested to hear what Anthony has to say, but I know that in my world and what I've learned is that with partnerships, it does require relationship, right? It always starts from relationship for me,
Yes.
and relationship starts with connection, right? So in the first meeting, I'm actually not looking to build a relationship right away. I'm looking to make a connection.
Yeah.
That's something that I tell myself. But Anthony, I'm curious to know like your formula and or like your perspective in terms of partnerships.
No, you nailed it. Like, so this is very relevant to the week I'm having, because just yesterday I went to Boston College to speak to some students that are members of a club there that supports Charity Water. And I was really excited to get to speak to them in person. And we had a really great like Q&A after I gave them a presentation. And the first question that really stuck with me was a student asked, what are the skills? What are some of the skill sets that your team has that makes brands want to partner with you versus other nonprofits? And like, not like how the organization is structured, but like, what are the skills that you need to have to be on Charity Water's team to be effective in those roles? And it came to me right away. It was like, oh, it's all about the interpersonal skill set. Like, we at Charity Water, whenever we ask our team, like, what's their favorite part about the organization, the mission is obvious. Like, everyone loves the mission, but it's the people that work at the org. We're all very like-minded. Like, we have different personalities, but we share so many characteristics that are recognizable, and people that are warm, welcoming, friendly, active participants in conversations, things like that. So when it comes to developing strong partnerships, just like you were saying, Chris, this has always been the case for me. It is a relationship. Like, you have to form a friendship and a relationship first, but to have like the most effective partnership. And I have examples of it on both sides, where you can just feel when someone is in it for the transactional element and it just doesn't go good. Like, it doesn't go well. It's like, it's off from the beginning,
Yeah.
versus where when we have a relationship that starts perfectly and is centered around getting to know each other, and maybe we're talking about like my wedding that's coming up, or they're telling me a story about their kid, and like all of a sudden we are developing this more personalized friendship, and the partnership is so easy to come from there, because I think it's trust. You're building trust, and not in a way that's like, oh, you got me that invoice paid on time. It's like, no, you're building trust in a
Yeah.
in a more familial way, like in a less like data driven way.
Mhm. Yep. No, I agree. Jeff, do you have any thoughts? Have you
I
learned
mean,
anything? Have you
I'm
learned
learning.
anything that you do?
I'm learning a lot of things about you two for sure. But yeah, I mean, obviously, love as a business strategy. We're talking about trust all the time. We're talking about relationships. But I know, like, for me personally, like sales and marketing and these types of things have always been my I guess weakness, if you will. Like, I don't like feeling like I'm selling anything. And one of the things that I've been personally working on has been around focusing on relationships and really nothing else, no matter what context I'm trying to work in, and removing the element of like, oh, I need to close a deal or pitch something, and just treating every single person I come across, regardless of context, with an element of like vulnerability, and just starting in that place. That's what I'm kind of resonating with in what you guys are saying, in terms of, partnership is no different, where it's, if you come with an agenda, it's, humans are very attuned to picking up on like what you're like, read between the lines. And so just having that ability to be genuine and coming forth with no agenda for the most part, because I mean, you schedule the meeting, so the agenda already is known what is going on, but you don't have to kind of just dive right in and just sell. And so it's something that I'm personally still working on quite a bit. So it's something that I aspire to kind of pick up more tips from you, Anthony, on on how to
Yeah.
truly build some good partnerships.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we're, in a way, we're almost always selling something. Like you're selling yourself a lot when you're meeting new people, or I don't even know anymore. I don't know how much that's already just blended into who I am. That's how it feels oftentimes. So like it's, there's a certain level of enthusiasm even that goes into it. Like you're demonstrating interest in the other person or the other company, the other entity, in a way that isn't just, in my case, like in Charity Water's case, it isn't just me being like, how much money you're going to be able to donate. It's also
Mm.
figuring out like, well, what works for you guys, and tell me more about like how your company got started, or why are you reaching out about wanting to support us? Like let's find that common ground and like share those like-minded thoughts of why we should work together, but yeah, that's another piece of it, is the enthusiasm
Mhm.
from both sides. Like you can tell when one is more enthusiastic than the other, and then it doesn't always work out that way.
Yep, and it sounds like some of that enthusiasm comes from a place of curiosity, where you're
Yeah.
approaching with the desire to want to get to know and the commitment to stay in that conversation until you find out. And I think sometimes that is not always present in certain sort of newly formed or potential partnerships where one side is just not curious about the other, which makes it harder. And it's like pulling teeth to get information.
I love that you brought that up, Chris, because curiosity is something that I remember when I was younger, in like you're trying to connect with different companies that maybe that you want to work for, or people that you would hope to just chat with them, to learn from them, from like a mentorship space.
Mhm.
And it can be challenging. Like a lot of people's favorite word is no, or that they're too busy. And I found that even still, like there are often times where there are brands that we're not the right fit for them from a partnerships perspective at the moment. But I'm so confident in like my ability, our team's ability, that if we were just able to establish a relationship where we have more of a personal relationship or friendship, and then later on something can happen, like that is such a good entry point. But it's hard to get them to say yes. It's why I personally try, when we get reached out to by brands that are maybe too small, or like where they can't fund a water project just yet, or they're just getting started, or students or even recent grads that want to talk with someone about Charity Water, and they want to learn and hear, get feedback on like how they're thinking about it. I try to say yes as often as I can, because I know what it feels like to be on the other side, where you're getting kind of stonewalled and you don't know why. There isn't always a good reason. And I have had so many conversations with people where I'll go into it being like, okay, I really don't have time for this right now. Like this is
Yeah.
going to take up 30 minutes that maybe I should be spending doing something else. And then I leave the conversation being like, that was incredible. Or we talk for an hour instead of 30 minutes. That would be one of my recommendations too for people, is just like, you don't really know where opportunities are going to come from. And you have to have that curiosity, like you said.
Yeah.
I think that's so important.
Yeah. Agreed. When you were talking, it reminded me of a back in college. There was this marketing project that I did, and I chose the client was Seven for All Mankind, and this is like, the luxury
At
gene
their
market.
peak, at their
Yeah,
peak,
at
Seven.
their
Yeah.
peak, but it was still so new, so it was less than a 10-year-old brand at that time, right? And I couldn't find information anywhere, and I needed it for my marketing class, and so I would call the company directly, and I called like 4 times and got nobody, no one. And then a Friday evening, I'm walking to my dorm room and I pick up the phone, my cell phone, which was like a Motorola Razor. And on the other side of it is the VP of marketing for Seven for All Mankind.
Wow.
And he spent an hour with me to talk through everything, all their strategy,
That's
their
amazing.
heritage, like, and I was like, oh my God, like this, I was like, I can't believe you did this. And he's like,
Yeah,
of course, he's like, I've been a student before. I know exactly what you're going through.
exactly.
And it was just like the most amazing experience that I've ever had. And that reminded me, and what you just said reminded me of like that small little yes that you give someone can carry them for a career even.
It
Right?
sticks with you, right?
Yeah.
Like, you'll always have that story. You'll always tell that story of like, wow, this person, like they did this for me. It's also something that motivates you to want to pay it forward. At least that's what it does for me. Like I think
Yeah.
about anyone that took time with me, not just when I was younger, but even when you're struggling to figure out what your next step is, you think about people that were willing to invest their own time or energy
Yeah.
in chatting through something with you. It means a lot, and
Yeah.
it certainly results in just such stronger relationships and better
Yeah.
business, you know.
Yep. No, because I bought a whole bunch of 7 Cheese after that.
That's funny.
And I was like, "Do you like this accurate?" Because the back pocket design is called an accurate, which is what he taught me. And I was like, "No, I didn't know that was called an accurate." But anyway,
They knew what they were doing. They knew they were going to sell some jeans. Yeah.
it's an hour of the VP of marketing's time, and they got some sales out of it.
All right, coming up on our allotted time, Chris, do you have anything else, or Anthony, anything else to add before we close this out?
What do you think, Chris?
My thing is just to thank you, but also just to tell everyone that one of the things that I feel Anthony does extremely well, aside from, of course, bringing levity into situations, but I think you are a great connector, and you've always been welcoming and inclusive of everyone who comes into your orbit. And I've known that about you since we were in college, and I think that if someone were to come and tell me that Anthony yelled at me, I would like, you did something. I would immediately assume they were the enemy, right? Like it's that serious for me. Like that's the way I see the way that you carry yourself. And so I think that I'm just glad that you're able to join, but I'm just proud of all the things that you've been doing in your career, but also to see what you're doing inside of Charity Water, which is an amazing organization, and that's changing the impact of the world, really, especially when it comes to the water crisis. I'm just proud to be on this call with you today. So that's all I want to sort of.
Wow. I don't know. How am I supposed to follow that up? I mean, Jeff, he really got me with that, but I appreciate that. It's also, I'm hoping that listeners can tell like that we just have a love for each other that comes from, so many years of friendship now, some horrifying number probably at this point, like what, 18 years or something. But I would say the same thing about Chris, and even that we clearly share these common viewpoints about what it means to build relationships and, leading with love in everything that you do, including business, obviously, which is the main theme here of everything that you guys do. But I've always felt like maybe that comes from when you're growing up, and everyone was in middle school at some point. Everyone knows what it's like to feel left out or on the outside, and it's such a bad feeling. So when you have the ability as you grow up to not allow for people to feel that ever again, or at least you can control how you're making those people feel. I've always wanted to do it in every aspect of life. Like it isn't about just my friendships, my personal relationships, but at work, like how can you help include some of your colleagues who are maybe less involved in a project, but you can tell like they would love someone to ask them a question. I think about that with like interns sometimes too. It's like you have interns in a meeting, turn to them and ask them what they think. Like they might be shocked in the beginning, and then they're like, wow, this is cool. Like you guys actually want me here. It's like, yeah, that's why we have you in this meeting. It's not just to like take notes. And I think that's something we do a lot with our partners. It's like we ask them a lot of questions. We want to welcome them in, welcome their perspectives in. And it's worked out really well for us so far. And hopefully we'll continue to see the type of growth that we've experienced at Charity Water, and ultimately see the water crisis end in our lifetimes.
That'd be amazing. Anthony, thank you so much for taking the time today. It's been a blast. Chris, thanks for being invited.
For being invited.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jeff. It was so nice to be invited this time.
I'll let this episode stand as a record to show that you have a standing invite to this. If you go back to our early episodes, he was in every single one, so he left. I didn't kick him out. Just saying. But no, all jokes aside, it was great. It was great being present for you guys, connecting on here, but also feeling much closer to you, Anthony, as well, because you really are living up to the hype of of unshakable optimism and endless energy, as someone once wrote about you.
I'll take it. Thank you guys so much. Thanks for having me on here. And you know, again, we'd never be able to do the kind of work that we do without this type of interest and support in our mission. So just thanks again for helping spread the word, and appreciate everyone that's listening.
Absolutely. To our listeners, we'll drop a link for Charity Water in the notes for you if you want to get involved. But as always, appreciate your support. Thank you for listening and tuning in. If you haven't checked out our book yet, I'll say it every time. Love is a Business Strategy. You can find it on Amazon and other places. But please do check it out. Tell your friends, subscribe, like, rate, do all the things. Yeah, thanks a lot. And we'll see everybody back here next week.